Welcome to Reading Under the Covers, a romance novel podcast where we chat, fangirl, and maybe even swoon over our latest reads. I'm Francesca from Under the Covers book blog, and today we are diving into something extra magical, and that is Dramione fanfiction that became published books. Now, if you're here, chances are that you already know the pull of this ship, which is Draco Malfoy and Hermione Granger, and it's been fueling some of the best enemies to lovers stories for years. And while we're not going to get that romance, RIP to that dream, the fanfiction world has more than made up for it with a ton of amazing fanfictions written about this main couple. But here's where it gets even better, because it is possible that you're not a fanfiction reader. Some of those iconic Dramione fics have now been reimagined as traditionally published books. Or I should say they're getting reimagined in 2025, because this is the year we're going to get a few of those published. So today I'm going to be breaking down 3 that are must-read books that started out as Dramione fics, how the plots will compare to the original fanfiction version, and why you should be excited. And you should actually add both to your TBR, both the fanfiction and the published book. If you're looking for even more Dramione fanfiction recs, I've got a full list of must-read fics on the blog, so you can check that out. In the show notes, I'm going to leave that link. Lots of amazing things for you to go and check out there. But whether it's your first time getting into fan fiction or you've already been consuming some of these fics and you want to make sure that you didn't miss any. And with that, let's talk about fanfic to book adaptations and why these stories are about to take over your TBR. First up, we're going to talk about Alchemised by Sen-Lin Yu, and this is inspired by the uber popular fanfiction Manacled. So first things first, let's talk about Manacled, the fanfiction. If you've been in Dramione fandom for even a second, I'm sure you've heard of Manacled by Sen-Lin Yu. This fic is absolutely legendary. It's not just in the Dramione world, but just in fanfiction as a whole. It's set in a dark dystopian world where Voldemort wins the war and Hermione is taken prisoner as a surrogate for pure-blood children. She's placed under the control of Draco Malfoy, who is not the person we knew from Hogwarts. He's hardened, he's emotionally wrecked, and yet still drawn to Hermione. This is one of those gut-wrenching, slow-burn stories that stays with you long after you finish it. It's brutal, beautifully written, and has a lot of layers of emotional depth that make it feel very real. If you're in the mood for a heartache-filled and soul-consuming romance with a redemption arc that just really hurts, this is the one. Now, the fan fiction is no longer available to get online because of the fact that it's being published. But if you can still get your hands on an older version of it, I think you will not be disappointed. So now let's talk about Alchemised, which is Sen-Lin Yu's upcoming traditionally published novel that is set to release on September 30th of 2025. Unlike some other fanfictions that have been published, this is not a direct adaptation of Manacled, but fans of Manacled will definitely recognize the dark and high-stakes themes that made the story unforgettable. So those are the elements that are still being kept in the story. In Alchemist, we follow Helena Marino, a former alchemist turned prisoner, in a war-torn world that is ruled by necromancers and alchemists. She is forced to make an impossible choice, which is to align with the enemy or watch her people suffer. Sound familiar? While it's not Hermione and Draco, the book captures similar emotional tension, survival themes, and an impossible moral dilemma that made Manacled so gripping. I think if you love the intensity, the darkness, and the slow burn angst of Manacled, then Alchemist is going to be right up your alley. It's going to be a must-read for this year. I, for one, am super excited to read this one. I got my hands on Manacled, so I still have to read it. And I am still debating whether I want to read the fanfiction first or hold off and read the book first and then read the fanfiction later. Now, for the second adaptation from fanfiction that is being published this year, we're going to talk about the book The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Bridget Knightley, which is inspired by the fanfiction Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love. This fanfiction was released under the name Is This Self-Care? And now the author is publishing her work under the name Bridget Knightley. So let's talk fanfiction first. Draco Malfoy and the mortifying ordeal of being in love. So this fanfic, in a world, is absolutely hilarious, but it's also deeply emotional in ways that you don't really see coming. So Draco finds himself cursed, literally and figuratively, with a growing mortifying realization that he is in fact falling for Hermione Granger. This fic takes us through his absolute agony as he fights tooth and nail to not be in love with her while still being completely obsessed with her. It's an enemies to lovers, it's slow burn, and it's full of delicious push and pull tension where Draco is both his own worst enemy and his own biggest problem. Now for the book, it's kind of a loosely inspired story by the fanfiction, and the book is called The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy. This is coming out July 8th of 2025, and it's the first in the Dearly Beloathed duology. So imagine all of that enemies to lovers and slow burn tension and all of that push and pull that we just talked about from the fanfiction, but now put it in a romantasy world with assassins and healers. So Bridget Knightley's novel takes the same reluctant, emotionally repressed hero dynamic and the sparks flying kind of enemies to lovers romance, but places it in a setting where an assassin and a healer from rival factions have to work together. Osric the assassin is poisoned and he has no choice but to seek the help of Orianne, our healer from a faction that hates his kind. So cue that forced proximity, the bickering, and a whole lot of tension as they try not to kill each other, and even worse, not to fall in love, because the horror. I think that this one also sounds so amazing. It was also super popular fan fiction, so I know that everyone is super excited for this one, and I always love stories where there is a healer element to them, so I'm very excited to read it as well. And then for the third book that we're going to talk about here today is Rose in Chains by Julie Soto, which is inspired by the Auction fanfiction. Now the Auction fanfiction, among others, was released under the name Love's Bitka 8, which is the pen name of Julie Soto. And this is actually not Julie Soto's first published book. Now, the auction is a bit intense. So the fanfiction itself, it's set in a Voldemort wins world. And the auction follows Hermione as she's literally auctioned off to the highest bidder after the war. Of course, Draco Malfoy is the one who ends up winning her. And what follows is a deeply angsty and emotional and of course forbidden love story that is filled with lots of power dynamics, trust issues, and a slow burning tension between them where you know that they're fighting their feelings the whole way through. And like I said, this is not the only fanfiction that Julie Soto has written under that particular fanfiction pen name, and I'm not sure how many of them you can still find available online to download. I hope that you got those downloaded before they were removed from the internet and that you can still get to read the magic and compare with the published books. So now for the published book that is coming out this year, it's going to be called Rose in Chains. It's coming out also July 8th of 2025, which I find very interesting that both of these books are coming out on the same day. So they're going to share a release date. And I guess it's going to be the battle of the Dramione books. Which one is going to be more popular on release? Let me know in the comments which one you think it's going to be, because obviously I think that the winner for the year is definitely going to be Alchemised, just because of the massive following that Senlin Yu has and how popular Manacled is in general. But if I have to put my money on one of the two July 8th books, it's going to be, I think, Rose in Chains. So that's my personal prediction on that. I would love to know what you guys think on it. So be sure to let me know and leave a comment as well and tell me which one you think is going to come out on top. Now, Rose in Chains is Julie Soto's take on the same kind of high stakes and captive romance premise, but it shifts it into a fantasy settings where there's a princess that is stripped of her power and freedom and is sold off to the heir of a brutal ruling family. I think it follows the premise of the fan fiction quite well, so I think that it's also going to work really well and translate for fans of the fan fiction, but we will have to see how that works out. I think if you love forbidden romance, emotional intensity, and that fight for autonomy in the auction, then Rose in Chains is 100% going to deliver for you. I've actually got the advanced reader copies for both of these books sitting on my Kindle, and I cannot wait to start them and to update you guys on which one I love the most. Before we go for today, I wanted to let you know that if you want even more Dramione fan fiction recommendations and you want to actually get into the fan fiction world with this particular ship, I've got even more fanfic recommendations waiting for you on the blog. So I'm going to again leave that linked in the show notes, and you can go and check out a full list of Dramione fan fictions to get into. I'm telling you, all amazing. So now I would love to hear from you. Which one is your favorite Dramione fan fiction if you have read one, or if you haven't, which one are you most looking forward to reading? Either from these 3 books that I talked about, whether it's the fan fictions or the published books, or any of the fan fictions that I've got on the blog. Leave a comment either on YouTube or the blog and let me know your thoughts on that. And that's all I have for you guys today. I hope that you added something fun to your TBR. And as always, if you want even more book recommendations, don't forget that you can visit the blog at underthecoversbookblog.com or our mystery site for some more thriller and mystery recommendations over at mysterylandia.com. And as always, make sure that you are subscribed to our free Substack so you don't miss any of the content that we post across all of our platforms. All of those links, again, are in the description down below. Thank you so much for listening, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!